I was just having a couple little issues here, which is my want. Love the issues. But the computer's really slow down. Okay, so it is no about it. It is pretty amazing how big the empire got and how it just stayed basically there forever. So we got the Roman lines. Some are still there, and like I have not been to it, but I guess there's a part there that has the line where you go and they have it about a mile of it, like it was in about 200. I guess it's really cool. I'll take your name on it. Is that correct?
It was Caligula.
Not correct. Brown?
Oh, yeah.
No, right. Okay, good. Beautiful. All right. And Pergamon. It's amazing the extent of his empire. Such a good. So we're going to go through the empire, just a few things about the Judeo-Claudian Empire, and then finish up with that. And tomorrow we're going to watch Engineering and Empire. The empire doesn't. It's interesting, but not to me. It loses a little bit once Caesar's gone. Once Augustus takes over, then it just is, brutal, horrible emperors who's trying to hold on and then get as much money as they can. So we got Battle of Pharsalus. Caesar met Cleopatra. I'm sorry. Everyone got this? We good? I should go this fast, shouldn't I? Did you like the video, the Rome, Caesar? That's really good. We will watch Constantine because that's when Rome adopts Christianity, and that's a really good story. So we are right. So like balding Julius Caesar took power, I think we're right. I showed you this picture of the balding, and he could wear the consul's wreath just because he liked it because he was going bald, and the game, Julian calendar. And the thing about it is the calendar would miss a quarter day every year, and that's why by 1500 they were way off. And so that's why if you know anything about Eastern Orthodox Church, they actually have their Christmas celebration and go until January 6th. Because they didn't adopt this calendar, because it's in Russia. They didn't adopt it until after the Russian Civil War in 1920. So that's why they would have Christmas on a different day, because they kept missing quarter days and they kept pushing it back. And so let's get right to the conspiracy. Do we have this in class? I don't think we got to this, right?
I think we got a little bit of it.
I think we got the Eyes of the Mar. Oh yeah, it's it. Et tu, Brute. We did get this. Et tu, Brute. He was killed. Mark Antony said avoided it, stabbed 23 times. Okay, I think we got to this. Yes, they were trying to, they thought we were saving the Republic, but let's be clear. These men want to keep basically an oligarchy. And so we had the choice between an empire, and an oligarchy, and what we're going to get is an empire out of this. And so, can I show you this? This is from the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic. And yes, people had just as much problem then as today. Well, actually, there's more problem today, but still, there's wear a mask, but be patriotic. War was going on. Even Kitty's got a mask. I bet the cat is unamused by the whole mask thing. Oh, by the way, this is a different mask. My strap here, my mask I had, broke. Unfortunately, I had like a bag of these, ones in my truck. I was so mad. So, more Civil War. We're back to Civil War. And the Civil War never really ended then in reality. The first part of the Civil War is going to be to try to, we appear to be going good. To kill the assassins of Caesar. Octavia was Caesar's nephew. He was kind of a sickly boy who, the legs weren't quite the same height. He was a little bit shorter than everybody else. For his entire life, he'd wear elevator shoes. So he'd be taller. And we tried to exaggerate his size because he was relatively unhealthy and it seemed more as kind of like a bookworm and not the warrior that he was supposed to be. And they created the second triumvirate. 3. Octavius 1, Caesar's grandnephew and would claim to be Caesar's adopted son. But also in the second triumvirate would be Octavian, Mark Antony, and Lepidus. Lepidus, I put question marks there because let's be clear about who Lepidus was. Nobody. He was a politician, relatively strong, but he was a non-entity. The thought was we need 3 because that was the triumvirate of Pompey, Crassus, and Caesar, and Lepidus would, go on to become a relative non-entity. The real fight was between Octavian and Mark Antony. And in 42 BC, once again in Macedonia, near Philippi, so near the capital of Macedonia, Brutus and Cassius, the leaders of the conspiracy, would be defeated by Mark Antony. And I was looking for, there's a picture I wanted to find, I couldn't find it, but I found this. This is an advertisement from the 1920s for French candy, chocolate. And it's the death of Brutus committing suicide, trying to sell French chocolate. I'm still trying to figure out why anybody would buy chocolate. Okay, that just makes me laugh. Now I need a drink because of that. And so they divided up the empire, which is used to done by your maps, was a massive by then. They all kept the trappings of the republic, after like they're still in the republic, but it was more and more an empire. Not quite 100% yet. And a couple things that happened after this. I mentioned they split the rule. Octavian took Rome in the west. Antony would be given Anatolia, what's now Palestine, Syria, and Egypt. And to cement this relationship, he married Octavian's sister. They did all these dynastic marriages. These were arranged marriages. And so that signified these two because they're clearly rivals. Octavian had the connection to, I forgot the end of it, I just realized that. The connection to Caesar, but Mark Antony was his best general, a loyal soldier, and the guy who won at Philippi. But Antony allowed himself to get isolated in the kind of decadence of Egypt. So we have Octavia versus Mark Antony. Octavian, though, was smart. He was competent. He did rule Rome to try to reestablish the rule of, at least the rule of the government. Not quite a republic, but they acted like a republic. And they reestablished the games, things like that. Got low grain prices, kept the people happy. So he did a lot of things that Caesar had done. He made enough deals with the Senate. the remainders of the Senate to keep them in line. He was a clever man. But Antony went east. So a couple things about this really quick. Antony would end up marrying Cleopatra. Remember, Caesar also had a fling with Cleopatra, and Cleopatra had Caesar's child. They would end up having 3 kids. Then Antony divorced Octavia, married, that's Octavian's sister, and they used to say that the saying was he's going native. He's becoming like an Egyptian. He's taking the trappings of a pharaoh, the trappings of a pharaoh. Now remember, Cleopatra was Greek, he was Roman, and they're now kind of jointly ruling Egypt. I know, weird situation. They say the same things about citizens of the U.S. or the colonies, the first American colonies, when they would start joining the tribes along the frontier, let's say Massachusetts. They're going native. And Mark Antony would say that Caesar's son from Cleopatra, Caesarion, I think I mentioned how they did a cesarean section on, a C-section on a tree without anesthesia. They were a little tougher back then. That's my generation, tougher generation. Of course, a third of all women died in childbirth. Women were exceedingly tough. But this is a direct threat to Octavian, isn't it? And this is going to trigger another civil war. So Octavian is going to attack in 36 before the Common Era, BC. And he attacked Egypt. Now, the thing was, the attack on Egypt, he had to gather his army in Greece to attack Egypt. And Mark Antony and Cleopatra made the fatal decision, stupid decision looking back at it. All right, he's going to attack Egypt. Let's get him in Greece so he can't come here. It was not a smart move. Even though they had a big army, you can imagine the supply line. Greece is a hard place to fight. And it seems like Greece is the death place of Roman civil wars, isn't it? So we're coming to the Battle of Actium. And here Mark Antony's fleet is going to be destroyed. And what happened is, Antony was encamped near a place called Actium, a little peninsula right here. He allowed himself to be surrounded. He had supply situations, went to the coast, tried to get resupplied. He got surrounded and supplies couldn't come. And so they tried to break out with Mark Antony's fleet against the Romans' fleet. But Antony was a soldier. He wasn't a sailor. He wasn't an admiral. He was a general. He didn't understand how to fight. His ships were outmaneuvered by the quicker Roman triarms, and they were defeated. Cleopatra and Antony were able to escape and get back to Egypt. But when they got there, they knew it was over. Octavian's going to come. They're going to be overwhelmed. Cleopatra and Antony had lost their credibility after this battle, and they both would commit suicide. We're not sure how Antony committed suicide. We're not exactly sure. There's all kinds of stylistic paintings over the years of, where's the picture? Yeah. Here's Antony dead and Cleopatra committing suicide. There's a myth that he charged Octavian's legions when they arrived to be killed by them. We're not sure. But the legend is, do you know how Cleopatra died? She was given a poisonous snake called an asp, put it to her chest, and committed suicide. Egypt became formally part of the Roman Empire, and the Civil War was done. The last vestige of Caesar and the Republic would die right there. Octavian would come back to Rome, a great hero. Here's another stylized one of Antony and Cleopatra. This was done. She's dressed like somebody in 1700. So Octavian becomes Augustus. So when he came back, he's all powerful. And you're going to see all these dramatic pictures of the manly, very muscular soldier, Augustus. When he wasn't like that at all. This was embellished to expand his, or to give him more credibility. These statues would be everywhere. They put so many statues of Augustus. There's so many statues of Augustus around. And after he died, for 300 years, they would just cut the head off of statues and put the new emperor on the head. So you see all these ones was kind of very crude near the end. They just knocked the head off, put a new one on. And it'd all be Augustus's fake body. And so he would rule, though, as the Most High. And a month would be named after him, February. And so August, and yes, he wore elevator shoes this whole time, elevator sandals. And he was made consul for life. So this is totally blowing up the old republic. So he has the power to make and enforce laws. He also got the title Princeps, where the term prince comes from, for citizen, for life. Also, he got the term imperator, meaning successful general, where the term imperial and empire comes from, imperator. He definitely had a little bit of a self-esteem issue, because we're not done. Then he was also called Pontifex Maximus, or the head of the church, the religious leader, and the Pope in Rome, when the Christianity would become the dominant religion, would take the name Pontiff. That means Pope, and that would come from this title. Also, he was a tribune for life, so he could call the Senate, he could veto, he could make laws, and he was the judge. They kept the trappings of the republic, but it's by all means an emperor, and it's going to be the beginning of hereditary monarchy. I'm still trying to figure out what this is. So I don't know if that's a god or just a creepy child. I almost forgot the last one. Primer inter pares, to be the first amongst equals. And so they can keep this illusion that we're all equal members of the Republic, but he is first. He is more equal than others. This should remind you of the book Animal Farm, right? You remember? You all read that, haven't you? You didn't read it? You probably read it your freshman year.
Yeah.
Did you read it? What if they don't read it anymore?
I know. That's interesting.
It's a good book. I think you guys might have been a little young as freshmen, but still, good story. Well, let me go back. Just go with me on this one. So Augustus Empire, they would eventually take this area right here, and he planned on moving into Germania. They thought this was going to be just incredibly lucrative for trade, especially the fur trade, and moved into here. And so he ordered an invasion, and a senator led as a general by the name of Varus. To the Teutoburg Forest, or Wald means forest, inside of what is now Germany, in the very thick forest just north of what is the Black Forest region. And Varus in 9 AD, to try to expand Augustus' empire. So he is still there, remember, emperor for life. Their long column, it's in blue right here, going through the forest, were ambushed. Were ambushed by Germanic tribes and wiped out. Hit and run attack, hit and run attack, hit and run attack, and eventually Varus and others would be killed. There are stories about Augustus walking throughout Rome and through his castle, or through his palace, and saying, Varus, oh Varus, where are my legions? Where are my legions? This was a brutal defeat. And even though there would be a couple times that Rome would move into the area what is now Germany, this would pretty much end their expansion eastward over the Rhine River. And so this was a key moment. Now, they would eventually go in and defeat the tribes and recover his staff and his eagle, but they never held it. It was more of a revenge raid. Caesar did a couple of attacks to protect his flank, but never tried to take it. Augustus was going to take it. But even though with this would be known as the Golden Age. Here's a replica of the statue. I think this is in Siena. Oh, no, this is in Rome too. He really pushed this idea of Roman morality and the strength of family, and that means the strength of the father. These are very paternalistic. The fathers, the family. And he really tried to embody this by being married for over 50 years, even though he didn't have children, and push this idea of the family. You can see out of this trying to do these high Roman morals and not Greek or Egyptian decadence. Part of the reason why it became hereditary. The idea was, okay, we have the moral family, and if who's going to have the best family? Augustus. So should his family be the next leader? He would eventually pass it on to his adopted son. Didn't really work. That's why you can imagine how the Romans would adopt much of the decadence that was in Greece and Egypt and stuff they've already been doing. But it became a big, important facet to act moral. They all want to act it and portray how moral they were. Of course, this would always have a backlash. And he really pushed commercial linkage. Now that the Civil War is over and Pompey destroyed the pirates, even though pirates are going to be a threat to the Roman coffers for the entire time. In fact, the Mediterranean will be a sea of pirates well into the end of the 19th century. You might have heard, and probably think you remember the Barbary Wars, where Jefferson sent Marines without a declaration of war in 1803. But they also created monopolies, and he set up, certain friends have monopoly over certain trade, and monopolies. I think the short run were more efficient. They're bigger so they can produce more, but this is going to lead to a lot of inefficiencies. If a company is the only entity that sells something that people need, if you're the only person selling a product that people want, like I'll give you an example, internet, broadband internet, which is what's the only company that sells it for the most part in Montana? Spectrum. How's their service? Huh? And do they have to be good? Because where are you going to go? And it's not that the workers don't work the tail off. They do. They're just understaffed. They don't have enough of them. When you call for technical help, those men and women are working their butts off. They just don't have to hire more. And they can have bad service because they have a monopoly. Imagine it happening in a broad scale. It's kind of happening here because we're all monopolies now in the US. But this is going to help. What I want you to write down, long run, this will hurt the economy. Because people are just going to accumulate vast fortunes and not care about how good their service is. This is going to undermine the economy. So when things get shaky, it can collapse very fast. Next, they expanded more citizenship to the provinces, like Caesar did. This buys loyalty. So you can go into places of Gaul and say, yes, you've been conquered, those who survived and weren't enslaved, and now you're Roman. And they got the benefits of Roman citizenship. And the big thing about this in the provinces, they might all think we're Gallic or an Iberian in Spain. But over the years, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, they become more Roman. They become more Roman. And that's why when you get the Byzantine Empire, and what is now Turkey and Greece, this area right here, heck, all the way until 1453, when it finally falls, the last vestige of this empire, they call themselves Romans to the end, even though they didn't have Rome. They kept this idea, we're Roman. And they created a professional police and fire department, the licors in Rome, as opposed to by hire. And this was one of the things that, okay, you won't have these fly-by-night fire companies owned by people like Crassus who will come start fires on their own to charge people insurance. They'll be somewhat professional. And a lot other towns followed them, this would go away. And this would not reemerge again until the 19th century, where cities and municipalities would create their own fire departments. Heck, there would be police departments in the United States to the 1830s. Lots of public works, lots of bridges, lots of aqueducts, lots of buildings. In fact, the story is that Augustus when Augustus became leader, Rome was made of brick. When he died, it was made of marble. And Rome became this great town of marble. You go to these facades, this is a market. Now I remember why I proposed this picture. There's a market in Rome, an old Roman market near the Forum. And you can go through and have these little stalls where their little Roman shops would set up from 100, 200, 300 AD. And this whole facade in front was marble. And then brick and stone underneath it. And they removed all the marble. You can see all the beautiful marble palaces of like the Catholic Church. Almost all of it was taken from Roman marble. In fact, like the Colosseum, the arena, the great arena, was a marble one. They just would go through, and that's how they took on the marble. And he brought a more effective coin system. They standardized Roman coins. They standardized Roman measurement. They say this money is worth this much, and it will be, we only collect taxes in Roman coins. So all their money went away and stabilized. And for a long time, this would mean stabilization of Roman money. Roman coins, therefore, were known for their stability until around about 200 years. And then they started shaving off little bits of gold to make more coins, and they started to make them out of lead and fake gold, and money lost its value. But from the money that was created by Augustus, they would still be using in medieval Europe up until about 1300. They didn't have the coins anymore, but they were acting like they did. So it could all be like on paper, or like they make little sticks where they would break out, and that's how their coins were. This was how they did exchange with now fake Roman money that comes from Augustus. Which is kind of funny. You might think, how can you do fake money? Don't we do that all the time? Have you ever used a credit card? Isn't it the same thing? They just did it with, like we have a debt, I break a stick, and you get one stick and the other, and you pay it, the stick again. Really kind of weird, but. And he also began to set up the emperor as a god, the cult of the emperor. In the 20th century, this would be known as cult of the personality. Saying that the emperor is like a god, and that's where the statue would be everywhere. People would start to worship the emperor as a god, and every emperor would follow this. Caesar did not do this. Augustus was first. And therefore, to put the emperor above everybody, the first amongst equals. For example, what we call Halley's Comet, that went over while Augustus was in charge, and he said, see, that is Caesar's soul that is coming over to confirm my divine leadership. Comets were cool anyways, but imagine a comet then, we had no idea why. Then they're really cool. So this became known as Pax Romana. And for the next 200 years, there'd be basically the peace of Rome. And that is a mock of what Rome looked like after Augustus's death. And this is the great Forum, the Colosseum. And the emperor around the Mediterranean was at relative peace, except for pirates. But part of the way it kept peace was this military rule. It was always who was the leading general, or maybe not the best general, but someone who could organize the generals. And it gave stability for a while. The problem is people got used to this kind of vague stability where they had very few rights and power was controlled on top. And remember, business power too, I mentioned the monopolies. When it all fell apart, it fell apart hard. And in the second century, or third century, it looked like it was all over. And then somehow it survived for another 100 years. Rome was very resilient. So Augustus would make this, and some of this is still there. I mean, you go to Rome today, Oh, this is Circus Maximus, the big track with the chariot races. Look how big it is compared to the Colosseum. Oh, and then the aqueduct coming through. It's when Rome would be, when they were making the subway for Rome. And part of the reason there's not very much of a subway in Rome. European cities, unlike American cities, you have a lot of subways, but Rome was just like a big kind of T, go through the middle, and that's it. And part of the reason is Rome is actually built on 10 to 12 feet of ruins. And the ruins are very unstable, but it's all, there's ruins everywhere. And they're constantly finding new archaeological discoveries. And some are just a building, they don't know what to do with it, but some are amazing discoveries to this day. This area here, let's see, it was over here, it was Trajan's Forum. When I was there in 2001, they had just found major discoveries there and had it all blocked up, which really made me sad because I wanted to walk through it. And so that is Augustus Empire. This is what I told you how they toyed with this, but barbs would be killed. So it ended at the Rhine and then the Danube. Trajan would go in this area. Lots of gold and iron. Augustus had 3 different attempts. He was going to invade Britannia. Remember, Caesar tried, got across, and then but never held it. But the massive empire, they would bring this in. They would eventually get this, but I told you about Crassus being killed, and they dumped the gold down his throat to show for greed. So they don't. The Parthian Empire was very strong, and so when Augustus died, I should have put this down, but it's all right. When Augustus died in 14 AD, he left it to his adopted son. He was a stepson, and then he adopted him as full son. And this will be the beginning of the Junio-Claudian dynasty. And this is Tiberius right here. And he abolished the People's Assembly for good. Remember, they're the ones who chose the tribunes. The People's Assembly was a trial to meet. It would be brought back kind of a few times, but one of the biggest vestiges of the real republic ended. Now it's all pure faith. All the vestiges of the republic are only for show. He was a very capable general. It's under his command that they would get back the eagle, their staff and eagle of his command, and bring it back, even though they could not hold Germany. And he was considered what we call in the 20th century a technocrat. He was very good at managing the taxes, managing the books, keeping the empire going. And so it's a very steady empire, relative steady growth, but for the most part, the rich were getting more and more wealthy. But his last few years, he escaped to the little island of Capri off the coast of Italy, and it would be infamous for the decadence of that. So here we have, Augustus making this big deal how, family and morals and honor and all of that. And, I always got to put the coins in. The coins are really cool. But still a good stable money system. He must have had a pretty prominent nose. But still, pretty amazing coin. You'll see by the end of the empire, you can hardly make out a face. That's when things are falling apart. But still, that's 400 years later. That would be the extent of this empire under Tiberius. Capri, Tiberius's bridge over the Tiber River in Rome would be completed and still, it's been obviously partially redone, but it still stands today. So if you go there today, the bridge is still there. The Tiber is relatively narrow, and it goes here, and then there's a little break where they let bigger ships go by. And here's Capri and his palace in Capri. And here it was infamous for every kind of decadence you can imagine, but he was best known for having young slave boys brought to him. And we'll let it go at that. Yes?
How many times have you visited?
Capri or Rome?
Rome.
Twice. You?
I remember.
Should we all go? You have a school bus? Let's go? Rome is really, 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 really fact, it was near this bridge. We got a recommendation to go eat at this little restaurant. And my wife and I went to it, and it was like literally run by these little Italian grandmas. And they just took an absolute love of me. It was just, I mean, they all came out, and they just loved me. It was so funny. And they ordered food, and have you ever heard of a disease called mad cow? Mad cow disease? It comes from eating the nervous tissue, and it can lead to insanity and a horrific death. And cows got it because you get it from eating the brain and neurons of animals. Cows got it because they used to feed cows brains of other cows. They mix it in with the suet because it's protein. Just don't think about it. Industrial farming is kind of yucky, but no, rephrase that. It's yucky, but we were there, and mad cow was all over Europe, so we weren't eating beef. You know, we ate mostly. We didn't eat at all, but we occasionally eat there. We went, okay, so we ordered this chicken dish, and she looked at me in the living room. No. And I'm like, what just happened here? And she came back, and men eat beef there. And she had this massive, I mean, I'm not kidding, the plate was that big. And it was a mound of pasta and a beef dish. And gave my wife a little, just there was noodles and mozzarella cheese, you know, just little dishes. Just the woman gets this, and and of course I had to eat it because. Oh, they loved me. That was so funny. And they got, and we're like, we're done. They brought us all cookies. And
That's awesome.
that was one of our best, it was one of the greatest times. And we just thought we'd just get a good meal. They all came out to meet me. Sometimes you luck out.
Yeah.
Some of the best times are when it's not planned, it just kind of happens. Had another experience like that in Britain, maybe I'll tell you that one later. We're just like, they fell in love with us. That's really cool. But it was just full of that. I'm not been to Capri, but I guess the island's really pretty. But he hid out there his last couple of years. But he created enough of a stable state that it ran. The problem was he too didn't have a son. But they wanted to keep it in the family. So it went to his adopted son, the infamous Caligula. And Caligula, I originally put down, he was only 25. I just put down so I remember how old he was. But he took over in 37, only ruled for 4 years. Tiberius is best general. In fact, he's the one who really did the conquering of Germany, Germanicus. Get the name, Germanicus. Gee, I wonder what's going to come out of his name. So Caligula was Tiberius' nephew, son of Germanicus, but he was adopted as Tiberius' son. And so he would take over. So they're trying to establish, we are the first family amongst equals. And they called him Caligula, which meant little boots, because his father was always with the army. And he would dress up as a soldier and put on the boots, the same kind of boots that the Roman soldiers would wear, and thus Caligula. And this is a marble statue that they remade, and they would paint the statues. And so they went through, and there was enough evidence on the surface of the paint color. That's what they painted when it was actually made back when he was alive. So that's pretty close to what he looked like. And for 2 years, he was a pretty good emperor, supposedly, like Tiberius. And then he became horribly ill and went insane. Which will be a fun story for tomorrow. Speaking of tomorrow, what's going to happen tomorrow? We have just a little bit of finish and want to watch Engineering Empire. Sound good? What's going to happen tomorrow? Election. Are you excited?
It would be interesting.
Oh my God, this is going to be interesting. So Wednesday, I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to watch Engineering Empire. My plan is, I'm one of those people, especially for the governor's race, I really got to know. And we might not know who's going to be the governor of Montana, because it's a toss-up between Cooney and Gene Fortas.
The whole thing is crazy. It's like, this is like one that people are actually really caring about.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't heard most, every other election, I haven't heard as much as I'm hearing about this.
And for the governor, that has a direct effect on my job. So that's a big one. And one is kind of pro, one's again, one's not very pro public education. But anyways, it might be 4 o'clock, 3 or 4 in the morning. And I'm one of them that's got to work.
Yeah.
So if I don't sleep very much, you're going to get like maybe a weird assignment on Wednesday. I'm just warning you, okay? All right, see you tomorrow. But yeah, you're right. This is a big election. So, what are we talking about today?
Oh, it's warm in here. Jeez.
Yeah, it's really warm.
Crazy.
Yeah, I turned the heat up a little bit because it was like ice cold, and I think I might have turned it up too much. I'm like that one. I have to be in here all day.
Yeah.
You have no idea how tough my life is. Right?
If I'm not miserable, is it even worth it?
And my mask broke. I had to wear my emergency mask.
What was that?
My mask broke, and I had to put on my emergency mask. Yes. I've got a little bag of masks in my truck just in case, kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to shut this off.
This is probably like the worst time of year. Weather-wise.
Yeah, it used to be February, January, February.